Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our Thursday night Boys from the Baltic Star After Hours. We're back to just two of us this week. It's me, Luke, in the red, and Ben in the white. It seems like I've gone red quite a lot recently. You've gone white quite a lot. I think we're developing a theme, very patriotic theme, very Boys from the Baltic Star theme, I feel.
Especially since Luke was actually wearing blue last night, wasn't he?
Yeah, we did.
He was wearing blue last night.
Exactly. Oh, it's like we've fallen into the trap. Tonight we're doing this without neither of us without alcohol, which is an important thing to note. Ben, after being attacked by a rabid dog, and he's now on medicine to save his life, and so I've decided to stay strong with him in a show of solidarity, and I am just on a fizzy carbonated drink, although drunk out of a pint glass to make myself feel better. So thank you anyone who's watching after joining in maybe for the first time yesterday. We had a great time last night, as Ben I'm sure would agree. Yes.
Yeah, it was tremendous, wasn't it? Such a lovely way to spend an evening.
Oh, definitely. So anyone didn't watch it, you should hunt it down on our videos. We chatted with Lee and we chatted with Pat from Diesel Shop, who have released on Kickstarter and had funded within 5 hours a new tabletop roleplay game called ChangedStars. And your eyes seem to widen at points, Ben. You seemed well into it, I must say.
I was very, very enthusiastic. It has to be said. I think the game sounds interesting, but I was also blown away by Pat and Lee. Their simple enthusiasm for the genre, for tabletop role playing, for their sort of community and everything. I thought it shone through in everything they said and did, and I was very impressed with them.
Oh, definitely. You can see it. Their very being was invested in setting this amazing world up. They care. They know what they're talking about, and yeah, they're invested in more ways than one, I guess.
And unlike Ewan, they had the good manners to laugh at my jokes.
Yeah, and that's why we're never having them back again.
Yes, exactly.
we can't give you too much for a big head. We've got to keep you in check somehow. If we just let anyone in laughing at you, we're never gonna be rid of you.
But no, that is probably true. Yes.
It did mean though that we earned ourselves a boon for tomorrow's session, out of the good spirit of putting up with you being far too excitable. So it worked quite well in the end. I'm trying to work out how to use it. I might attempt something utterly ridiculous.
Well, that's what they're for, of course. That is what they're for. The opportunity to say, right, this one really matters, and it doesn't necessarily have to matter because it's plot relevant. It could matter just because it matters to you in that moment. Yes, just try to encourage you and not to use it for any random gymnastics that nobody's watching.
I almost prefer that as a way to do it. I was thinking about using mine for juggling or something, just to get a round of applause, a bit of busking, just a few extra credits, just a bit of, who wants to use it in trying to kill some big baddie? That's boring. Got to be more creative.
I agree. I absolutely agree. Yes. Creativity is everything in role-playing games. If you're enthusiastically buying in, it's what your character thinks is important, not necessarily what you know in the metagaming way is important.
Exactly, it's what's important to them at the time. It's going to be very hard now because it's very important for me for someone to buy a zoot suit after the conversation last night.
Yes, of course.
But of course, Cara and Sarai won't know that, so they'll have to live on in their boring old vac suits with their armor.
Yeah, so I mean, you actually know more about ChangedStars than I do. You were in longer communications with Pat before we had our chat, and you are one of their very first backers, of course, on Kickstarter.
I am. All that hard work I put in clicking 2 buttons.
It must have been a struggle.
It was, but someone's got to do it. I think at the end of the day, and I was the willing person to do it.
Yes. So that does raise the question: what was it originally that made you buy into it? What was the thing that said, "I want to be part of this"?
Um, there's a few things. First of all, it's sci-fi, which is an instant plus for me. So looking at the role play games I do own, I'm looking over there because there's some there. Of course, I've got Traveller, I've got Cyberpunk, Red. A friend managed to get me The Expanse, which I'm going to read through at some point, which is interesting. I've not really watched it. I just know there's very good things about it. And of course, as we talked about last week, and we'll probably touch on again this week, just sci-fi love in general.
Yes.
So there was that. There was the fact that the word communist was used in the discussion.
Yes.
Which is a different angle because so much of everything in role play is, and I'm sure it will be in that game as well, the sort of personal wealth development. Even when we play Traveller, we're trying to, we go around siding with the workers' unions and whatever, but we're still making money on deals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a sort of responsible capitalism that you practice, for the most part.
That's what all capitalists say they exercise. Practice.
Yeah, and given that you practice it between serial coup d'état, it's possible you're not as responsible as some.
No, exactly. Well, responsible capitalism, irresponsible murdering.
Yes.
That's our tagline. That's what's on our business cards. Boys from the Baltic Star pretend to be socialist, but are into capitalism and killing. That's
yes.
just like all roleplay groups, really.
To be fair, I think there are a lot of people out there who refer to themselves as socialists who are actually fans of capitalism and killing.
Well, that's true. Sadly.
Yeah. Obviously, I'm not naming names here because I'm already struggling with potentially horrendous werewolf side effects from a dog bite, and I don't want to add, any other risks to that.
I'm still looking out for when your foot comes into screen to scratch behind your ears. Then I know there's a problem. Then we're stopping it. That's the sign to stop it at that point.
Yeah, at that point.
Yeah, at that point.
Yes, I can't shake the feeling that if the cure for lycanthropy wasn't actually silver but was amoxicillin, it would not have made quite so many good movies.
Exactly, it'd be much more simplistic. Oh, poor Miss Wealth, just take 2 of these a day, and you'll be all right by the next movie.
You'll be fine.
Quick, hold him down. We're going to pour the medicine down his throat.
Yes. Yeah, wrap it in bacon. That way he'll eat it.
Exactly. You'd eat it after all your vegetarian food today.
Oh my God, yes. Yes.
Yes. The other thing that got me into it, I guess, so there was that sci-fi communism, and then the stuff about, I guess, feminism and gender roles in it. I play, as we know in Traveller, I play 2 female characters. I've got 2 daughters. When I worked in a primary school as PE teacher, I was a big champion of the girls' sport. So I went on a lot of courses where sort of girls, when they hit 13, 14, some horrific number, like 93% of all girls just like stop. Yeah, 10 and 11-year-old girls are doing all the PE, they're playing in the football team and that. But as soon as they're all separated out and, things change, they just stop. And there's a lot, and growing up, I did a lot of, my jobs have been mostly with women. And so for me, being an anarchist as myself and believing in like the equality of it all, for me, that's fascinating stuff. There's a game that I want us to play one day, which is the Night Witches game, which is about the female Soviet pilots doing bombing raids in World War II in old. They were only given the old World War I planes.
Yeah,
and that has a similar thing. It's feminist. It's about sexuality. It's about all these things, and it's quite an interesting thing. And it's nice, I think, because us being guys, blokey blokes, I think it's important to just challenge our thinking in the way we are, I think. And
yeah, I tend to agree. I mean, for one thing, you are dealing with something set in the future, and if if the amount of progress society has made in offering some measure of equality to women over the last 100 years or so is anything to go by, it's reasonable to assume, I think, that there is going to be more and more impressive progress going forward. It's still shocking to me how recently women couldn't vote and couldn't own businesses and things like that. It really is practically within living memory, and so yes, I think there's a very, very good chance that much of the future will hopefully continue the progress that has been made. It would be weird to me to have a future where that wasn't the case. And if you did have a future where that wasn't the case, you'd have to put in the reasons for it. You'd have to explain how things had slid back or changed the way they did. And of course, in Changed Stars, they've got this immediate history behind the timeline where there's a big war and then a big defeat for humanity. And to some extent, their social structures have been imposed upon them, or at least, heavily influenced by the aliens that beat them in this war, which I think is a pretty fascinating setup for anything.
No, for sure. And I think we'll learn more from reading the lore, hopefully as more of the stretch goals are unlocked, because that's going to be great. The more sort of lore they can put in for it. And I think, but I downloaded the quick start last night, which you can do at Drive Through RPG, which is free. So I downloaded that. I downloaded it today and had a quick flick through. And you get a little bit of background on the races. But you can see how the races tie into that overall theme, with the Thren sort of bringing that sort of more feminist and sort of gender part into it, and then the others, the bug guys, I've forgotten, which I'm embarrassed about, who that's that sort of communal hive mind working together type thing. So it's that there's a combination, so you can see how those plus some of the more positive human traits, I guess, combine into that the trinity that they have for the overall picture, which is really interesting, I think. So no, definitely, I'm looking forward to getting the final book, which I think is going to be end of the year or next year. I think early next year is the aim, and having a good old read through and then a good old playthrough.
And they were, I mean, they were very enthusiastic about talking about the politics of it as well, weren't they? They seem to care greatly about setting this in a world that they could thoroughly explore, that was some quite cutting edge ideas. And it does seem a little bit odd to me. I don't think it's as much the case now, but when I was first starting to play role-playing games back when the dinosaurs roamed the earth, very long time ago now, my group of friends, it would have been very, very unusual for any of us to pick a female character as a PC, even though we would enthusiastically play a half-orc, you understand. And there is something intrinsically odd about the fact that you would, you'd play a goblin before you'd play a woman. And hopefully that kind of thing is changing now a little bit.
I'd be very interested. I don't know the numbers at all. I'm sure there's people that have looked into it and follow, looking at TTRPG Twitter, which is a rather lovely place generally. I'm sure I could put the question out there in a poll tomorrow and get some answers. But about the number of guys that will play female or like non-binary characters now, and how that works, and especially if there's, because some games will look at relationships or even sex, or fancying other people, how much that plays into it, if that makes sense. Like with Kara and Soraya, I've not really touched on anything to do with sexuality or relationship, because, to be honest, it's not been at the top of my mind. I'm not, it's not in how I'm looking at them. I've not really thought about it. But I could imagine being a teenager in the 80s And oh, you're playing a girl. Don't play girl. You kiss the boys. And stuff.
Yeah. Yes, and I mean, bear in mind, my group of friends were not like the most masculine of male friends. We were a pretty nerdy group, but even so, yes, it would have led to a few jokes. Um, uh, so be it. Perhaps the world has moved on a little bit. Perhaps not as much as I think. I don't know. Maybe I've just reached a level of personal maturity where I wouldn't make fun of people, and I'm assuming everyone else is the same.
No, you've reached the shrug. So what? I don't care. All right, water off my back. I just want to play someone that's got a creative. There's something creative about the way I can play them. It's all about the
Yeah.
story, isn't it? It's all about the story. It's all about the interactions. And if you can do that best with a female character or a male character, a non-binary character, any sort of character, then we should be willing to jump in both feet and go, and we should want to be in a setting and a group where we can do that.
Yes. I mean, the only thing that I find holds me back from doing it more myself, that kind of thing, is I find it harder to put myself in the place of someone that I don't have as much shared experience with. And I do know that sounds a bit ridiculous when you're talking about, yes, I'm a wizard, or I'm a spaceship captain.
all of my shared experience of being a wizard.
All of my shared experience. But it is to a certain extent true that if you're going to play a woman, you then sort of want to do her justice, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And I think it feels easier. It may not actually be easier, but it feels easier to do justice to a wizard than to do justice to a woman or a gay person if you're straight. You know, it feels like a different thing. You'd have to work harder at it. You'd have to be thinking about it pretty much all the time, so you were conscious of those decisions. Doesn't mean you can't try. But I think it does make it a little bit harder, for me at least, because I don't have that specific past experience.
And to be fair, you are generally playing about 30 different characters every evening when we play, let alone having your own one to worry about.
Yes. Yes. That is the curse of the referee. You rarely get the opportunity to really play one of these characters with extraordinary depth. But it is it's still obviously worth doing, and you want a diverse cast of characters. You want all the characters to have slightly different motivations and backstories and reasons anyway, don't you? I mean, it just adds to the variety of the people out there.
Well, I don't know if I've said this on camera before in one of our after hours chats, that part of the reason why I picked to play as two girls was because at the time when there were three of us and you, everyone else was guy. You know, we have 4 male PCs.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, do we just? I felt like we'd be missing an angle on things if we just had all guys.
Yeah.
And so I went for one. I was like, actually, I quite like the idea of having 2. Let's go, 2 girls, 4 guys, and now it's 2 and 2, which is a nice balance, I think. And
yeah, I agree with you. And I mean, it's worth pointing out that in terms of the NPCs you've met, only there are only sort of 2 relationships that I can think of off the top of my head. Romantic relationships between NPCs that you've actually encountered and dealt with. One of which was caught very short when the woman was brutally gutted by a Moab.
oh yeah, there was hints of that because there was a lot of messages between the 2 of them on her device, wasn't there?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes. And the other one, the one that you're currently in the middle of,
Sever.
is a gay relationship.
It's Sever and old mate, innit? Suspicious bloke.
Yeah.
The guy that someone on our team tried to kill.
Indeed.
Certainly wasn't me. It's definitely not my style.
No, that would be a terrible, terrible thing to do.
I'd have just tried to gamble all his money away. Probably is what I'd have tried to do.
Yes, probably. But you do have to assume that such things will exist in the future. There's no reason they shouldn't.
Right too.
And therefore they will be the kind of thing you'll blunder into every now and then.
And we do blunder into a lot of things, to be honest. So.
Oh yes, yes. You're not always the most focused of groups.
No, I do feel we need to focus a bit more tomorrow night, because some nights I do just be like, I just feel like, let's just go to a cafe and literally order every single round and every single food item and blow by blow account of the evening. whereas you save people by going, and you have a rather lovely evening the next day. It's like, I'm glad you do that, because otherwise I'd have spent 6 hours talking about things that.
Yes, there are those moments where I realise this dawning horror that you guys are actually going to describe to me what you're each drinking every round of a pub evening.
Exactly, yeah.
Do I want the same thing again, or do I want to go for a different drink this time? It's like, oh my God.
As you had literally asked, like, what whiskey have you got? You're like, oh no. As your face just falls. Oh no. It's gonna be one of those evenings. I had so much planned for them. I had all these meetings, all these encounters.
To be fair, however long you want to do the descriptive stuff, those encounters will still be waiting for you.
As they literally die of old age while they're waiting.
Yeah, and not all of them of giant sharks.
No, thank goodness. No. More than enough giant sharks.
Yeah. Oh. So, yeah, I suppose one of the things, loosely referring to giant sharks, one of the things I fell in love with when I was a youngster was horror films. So I've always been a bit of a fan of when science fiction horror comes together, whatever it is. And there's sort of lots of little horror elements in science fiction. So every now and then, as we play through Traveller, of course, which is pretty much an enormous open universe you can put anything in, every now and then I do try and slide in something that's reminiscent of a horror film or a disaster movie or something that amuses me, which you guys can experience. And I'm going to be very interested to see what you do with ChangedStars, because we were discussing this, weren't we, and suggesting that once the game is fully available to us, we should actually stream a one-shot or something of it.
I'd really like it. I think it's definitely something I want to do, because I think we'd already been taught before we sort of even knew of it, really. We'd been discussing about when we can get back together again and things, and actually physically be around each other, if we can still physically bear each other, that is, after all this time.
Oh, I'm sure we'll be able to. I'll be allowed out by then. It'll be fine.
It'll be all fine. That we were looking at the potential of throwing in the odd one shot on a Thursday, or if we could get to that level where we're allowed to upload videos, do it recording us and then putting something in of a one shot of this and that. And it feels like, ChangedStars, when it's out, feels like it's leapt up the level a bit, I think.
I agree. Yeah. I think the opportunity to play the occasional different game and try something out that's completely different and completely new, that opportunity is something I would highly value. And I would like us actually to have the opportunity to try some genuinely new stuff, because I think the art of writing tabletop RPGs it's moved on a bit since I first started all those decades ago. And there's interesting new stuff and new concepts coming out that it would be well worth trying. I'm also determined at some point to take you guys through a fighting fantasy game.
What with its 2 stats? This is
just
strength and skill.
Skill and stamina from memory.
Skill and stamina, even better.
Yeah, that'd be fun. That's your lot. And I think that can be a lot of fun. It's the pressure of the rules away, make the game really, really easy to learn, and then it's all about the role playing and the decisions, isn't it?
Yeah, I think there's two ways. There's sort of, you can fall in love with the games with the very heavy lore that you can wrap yourself in like a big old duvet, and then there's also a lot of space for games that literally, hey, so you guys are these, and you've got to get from this point to that point and find something or defeat something. Okay, off you go. And I think there's a place for that whole range. Now, I was reading there's a tabletop roleplay game magazine that's just coming out. Weird, I think it's called Weird Magazine, which I managed to get a copy of. There's these guys they're beautiful little things. I'll show you sometime. Really nice item. When in May when we can meet up, you can have a go with it. But there's an article in that about one of the European countries. They're seeing a big growth in very indie roleplay games, short, simple roleplay games that people are picking up and playing over a few hours worth of something. And I think, yeah, that's made for a one-shot evening, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I agree. There are these are they called one page or one sheet games where the entire game is basically printed on one side of a sheet of paper?
Yeah, Ewan showed me the one about that I got obsessed about the bears and honey. Bears trying to get honey.
Oh yes.
You are bears. You are bears trying to get honey. I just liked it because you rolled the dice to see what sort of bear you had, and one of them was bear with hat. I was like, that's the game for me. I can be bear with hat. Then I'm happy.
yes, bear with hat. I do love that concept. You know? There are bears with different strengths and skills. This particular skill has hat.
It's got to be the bear with the pork pie hat from the front of whatever booze it was. Hofmeister? What was the one with the bear with the hat?
Yeah. I think it was Hofmeister actually. Yeah.
Other refreshing beers from the 80s are available or not available because they were from the 80s.
Yes. I mean, I don't know if that beer still exists. No, exactly. It probably does.
Some late advertising. we might never hear back from them. We might never get the royalties.
No,
worth a try.
I think it's probably a bit of a stretch to suggest that royalties are on the way.
If Hofmeister are listening, get in touch. A crate would go down quite nicely on a Friday evening. Yes. And then I'll definitely be bear with hat in that game.
When we're allowed to meet up in person, we can crack open a case of them.
Exactly. That's it.
Yes. Yeah. I am actually looking forward to that again. The idea that we can actually get together and be literally in the same room, playing the same game. It will pose a couple of technical challenges, of course, but it will be such a treat to go back to the way we used to, the way we used to play.
No, definitely. I've seen some polls that people have posted about when they can, how will people role play? Will they stay online or go back face to face or mixed? And a lot of people have actually said they'll stay online. And I guess if you've got Roll20 and things like that, I guess it's set up that if you don't have a group nearby, it's what every lonely kid in a village in the 80s and 90s wanted. Really, yes. Wasn't it? Like having a chance to meet up with people online for it. But we're just fortunate because we live within, me and you are like a 40-second walk, and you're only a 15-minute walk.
That is, of course, the thing. There must be people who, through lockdown and COVID, have gone online in order to find a role-playing group and have found one and built one from scratch. People just said, yes, I'm looking for someone to play a game. And now lockdown's coming to an end and they're sort of saying, so where do everybody live? And it turns out, it's Sydney, Los Angeles, Paris. And you think, okay, so I guess online for the future still.
Yeah, as much as I'd love to go to face-to-face, I don't think we can. So I think we have to realise that we're in a position that not a lot of people are. Because I know of groups in America that will be able to meet up once a month or so. Like I've got like that. We meet up every month for like a weekend because so and so's from out of state and so's from across state and so and so's got, you know, a 5 hour drive. Things that for us would be like the whole length of the country. Yeah, but oh yeah, it's only a 5 hour drive.
Yes, yeah, it does. I think because of the size of the country, they have a completely different concept of how distance works. You know, they really do think in terms of, you know, it's just around the corner, 3 hours away by car. We tend not to do that in this country.
No, 3 hours gets me to the Midlands. I'm not just going there on a Thursday night.
No, no,
Speaking of the
nothing to see.
Midlands, speaking of the Midlands, back to your horror.
Yes.
Yes. So you said you were loving like sci-fi horror. What for? I don't think this is something we really touched on last week. We talked about Alien, which of course is well deserving of its own space. But you didn't really touch on too much else in the sci-fi horror genre.
It's true, and I think it's partly because what we did, of course, is hit the top one first, and everything else would be a bit of a letdown after Alien.
We did go a bit early on Alien, to be fair.
It is probably the best example of the crossover, I think. But the way people normally think about it is that this concept they call the genre, or just genre, which covers science fiction, fantasy, horror, and alternate history, basically, means that there's a way of pitching it where you would say that all horror is in some ways related very closely to science fiction. But there are some pretty decent horror films that are based around aliens, particularly. You think about the John Carpenter version of The Thing is pretty terrifying for a youngster.
Oh, it's pretty terrifying for me. Still, I've got a real problem with body horror, and so for me, that's like the king of horrible stuff.
And well, if you know, there's a lot of Cronenberg. There's a lot of there's a lot of, I don't know if it would strictly qualify as horror, but certainly dark psychological stuff, which, if you analyze it deeply, it's more troubling the more you think about it. So things like Blade Runner, which, you know, you can pitch it as a sort of modernized film noir, but it's also a very dark story if you really think about what they're doing with these replicants. You know, having built a slave class of intelligent beings is, well, that's pretty dark stuff.
Mm. Yeah, for sure. With Logan's Run, you hit 25, and that's you done with society, and they've built up a beautiful ritual. Although it's a terrifying ritual, quite frankly, but you know, as a big, and built it into their society, so it just becomes the norm that people kind of accept.
Yes, and I think Logan's Run is arguably also a horror film, though it's sort of pitched as a thriller, really, and an absolute classic. It's one of those films lots of people hate, but I've always thought it's brilliant.
No, I really like it. That's really good. I saw it quite late in life, considering I was in late 20s probably, and yeah, really liked it.
So by the time you saw it, you were already supposed to be dead then?
Yeah, actually. It was. I was rooting so hard for the old people. Come on.
Yeah, no wonder you think it's a horror film then. If you saw it as a kid, you thought, oh, this is great, this is perfect.
Wow, this is just like, with no adults around, it totally wouldn't be like Lord of the Flies.
Yeah, things can go a bit Lord of the Flies if kids are completely without supervision.
Oh, tell me about it. I know that at home. Give them 5 minutes in the kitchen.
Yeah. Children have what you might call sociopathic tendencies, don't they?
Luckily, their reach is quite small to begin with.
Yes.
It's balanced off.
Yes, I always knew there was a reason you don't allow them access to knives and things. For some reason, I had this weird thought that it was because they might hurt themselves, but no, obviously.
No, it's others. Clearly, come on. Hide the
Yeah,
matches. Right. It's,
yeah, but I do think, I mean, there is some good crossover horror and science fiction. There's a lot that isn't, um, really strong crossover, um, because it fails on one of the two. It's either lousy science fiction or it's lousy horror, and it tries to be too much and falls between the bases. But when they make the emphasis one or the other, where they say, as with Logan's Run, it's a science fiction film, and then there's a little bit of horror in there, or with Carpenter's thing, it's a horror film with a little bit of science fiction in there. It can often be very powerful, I think.
I think so. And for me, I think the best sci-fi, the best horror is where almost sometimes there's more happening in your mind than on the screen. So, you're worried about what's off screen, but what would happen to you if that thing got you? How horrible that would be. And
Mm.
and I think that ties in with sci-fi because especially space and the beyond is a whole world of a whole universe of what if, more than you can see.
Yes, and when you find yourself being chased by velociraptors through Jurassic Park, this is clearly a science fiction film. But it doesn't sort of play like one. It plays like a disaster movie.
Yeah.
And that kind of thing is, as I say, it can be a very strong film. And obviously, Spielberg has spent a career making science fiction films, for the most part, which had little elements of horror or thriller built into them. And to be fair, he has made films that aren't science fiction, to be honest. Not all his films are even really fictional. But he has a track record of Close Encounters and E.T. and things like that, which they're not really pitched as horror films, but they have a little bit of horror to them.
he provided the ending for a sci-fi film, which I thought, although it's not horror, had some horrific concepts. I guess it's not AI. Generally,
Yes,
generally panned, but mostly because the ending was horrible. I thought the ending. 'Cause they said it was it Kubrick or someone originally AI? But
I think it was actually.
because the
I think it
ending,
might have been Kubrick.
I don't spoiler alerts for a 21-year-old film or whatever it is. But the original ending, where he's underwater, is a haunting ending,
Mm.
haunting, and that apparently that was Kubrick's original view of the ending before Spielberg came in and was like, right, we can't end like that. We're trying to make a blockbuster here. We need a happiness. But throughout it, stuff like the robot boys are just discarded because as far as the people that own them are, they're
Mm.
just artificial. So they don't even care if the robot has feelings because they're not human. And they're just like
Yes.
just send them off. Don't care about it. That's really horrific, really, for a being that is connected and clearly loves and feels things for people. Very sad.
Well, yes, because presumably they've gone to all the trouble of creating synthetic emotions in a robot in order to make it bond with people, and then forgotten that they've then created synthetic emotions for it. So you have to kind of treat it like people a bit.
But there's the video game. What's it called? It's over there, and I'm squinting because my light's too dark. Detroit Become Human, which is about you play three different synthetics. It's set in the future, and they all have emotions, and you go through three different stories. One's like a policeman, like a detective. One is just like she's a lower model, but she's designed to be like a help around the home, a cleaner, washer, cook. And then the other guy who was the assistant to a very famous painter who gets killed. And he sort of starts an uprising revolution. The woman bonds with the daughter of the father who's abusive, and they sort of run away. And the other guy's trying to. It's really interesting look at, because you forget their AI. You forget their AI. The game is brilliant at making you care about them just as humans.
Yes.
And that's very clever. And a good film will do that, I think, as well, where you start we talked about it, Ex Machina, don't we?
Yes.
Last week, that you get sucked in, you fall for it.
It's true. Yeah, a wonderful, wonderful example of how to make an AI, which is clearly an AI all the way through. There's no doubt in your mind, and yet you actually do start to care deeply about what happens, which makes it kind of a bit of a tough ending to watch.
Yeah, for sure. And you're right, they don't pretend about it. The first time you see it, it's got its see-through skin on. You can tell it's not a human. It's almost like the Turing test is being done on you, the viewer, as much as it's being done in the film towards the character.
Absolutely.
Very clever, very clever.
I always think that the Turing test is only half of the test, if you know what I mean, because the idea that you create a situation where you can communicate basically by typing with an entity, and if it comes to the point where the entity can communicate back sufficiently convincingly that you believe they are a person, then by definition they are effectively a person. This is the idea. So the thrust of it is you have the ability to determine through experience, through actual real world experience, what whether or not an AI is successful, rather than trying to use metrics or maths or anything like that. You just say, does it come across as human? But I think the other side of the test is just as interesting, because I've met quite a lot of people I suspect would fail the Turing test. And if you were exchanging messages with them, you'd think, no, I don't buy it. That's definitely an AI, not a very well written one at that. So I think we should actually start doing that as well, because if you knew that you were talking to some humans and some AIs, and you got to the point where the AI was sufficiently good, not that it would convince you it was human, but that it would convince you it was human more often than some of the humans, I think that would be enough to do it. Because perhaps we're setting the bar too high for the Turing test. Yeah. What was the old classic one about, if you type into to one of the AIs back in the day, it was, what do you think about the phrase necessity is the mother of invention? And the response came back, tell me more about your family.
Yeah. But then I think I've been in conversations where I'm not paying attention, where I pretty much respond in the same way. What? Oh yeah, your mum okay? Is she?
Perhaps there should be graduation. So it's you don't have to pass the whole Turing test. You can pass the Turing test for distracted person.
Yeah,
Turing test for drunk person.
That is true. Yeah. Can you sort of hold some kind of chain of conversation?
Yes. Yes, if you just start saying, you're my best friend and I love you, it's like, okay, yes, this is a drunk person. Yeah, but yes, I mean, you're not a big horror fan, are you? You're not particularly enthusiastic, though. I know you have a fondness for battle royale.
Battle Royale, which is I will fight to my final breath, which is fitting for Battle Royale, I guess, that it is a black comedy.
Yes. Yes, I would agree. It has some faintly dark moments.
Oh yeah.
But some of them are extremely funny, and it's a very clever concept.
Oh yeah, definitely. Like, I've got. I'm a fan in such as I've got the films, I've got the book, I've got the anime, you know, the comic books collection, um, the Kubrick figures, which I think are quite collectible actually, which is like a big version of Lego from Japan. So I've got a load of stuff on it, and I think the horror in it, I think, is less the fact that the school kids are killing each other on an island, which is horrific in its own sense. But again, it's tying back into the society that everyone has deemed it acceptable that in every prefecture, as is in the book, I think it's just one class a year in the film, but every prefecture has one class of 14-year-olds or whatever every year that goes and fights to the death for one survivor because the kids have got a bit out of hand. And I think the worrying thing for me in that societal horror is that there'll be some people in England or whatever go, yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, get them. Kids got no respect these days. They should go. Oh, you know, they should give them some weapons. You hear it in conversation. Just give them a load of weapons. Stick them on an island. You know, that's horrific. Don't. It's like Black Mirror's the same. For me, the Black Mirror episodes that hit the hardest are the ones that have inventions in that you could see a lot of the population going, yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, he's a pervert. He's a paedophile. He should have a thing where he only sees everyone else as static and he can't see another human being. All he lives, and everyone can see him as a bright red outline, so they know he's a pedo. So think about that's horrific. Things about what's the other one? There's a girl who wakes up at the start, and it turns out that she was a murderer, or she was part of a murder of a child, and her punishment is to be her mind wiped and wake up every morning and be sort of stalked through a town where she doesn't know what's going on, thinking that she's being chased, and living that fear while people are. And it turns out at the end it's all a show, and people have been invited to watch it and sort of scare her. And then her mind's wiped as a punishment. And you can see people in the UK, certain people will be like, yeah, she's killed someone. She should be punished like that every day. You know, that's horrific.
Yes.
Utterly horrific.
Actually, it was, as you were talking, it sort of just occurred to me that Battle Royale and Logan's Run are sort of exactly the opposite film from each other.
That's true, actually. Yes, it's the older generation seeing off the younger ones. Yeah.
But there is this sense that gets forgotten quite a lot about whenever you mete out a punishment for anything. You have to try and maintain your own humanity as a society. It's the basic reason, I suppose, that I have a problem with the death penalty in any form for anything. And it has nothing to do with whether or not the crime technically could deserve such a punishment. It's down to the fact that I don't think society is helped if it goes around killing its citizens. I think that's a bad thing for society to be. So the death penalty therefore shouldn't happen. But I completely understand why somebody who has, been victim of a horrendous crime might feel that they would get some satisfaction from the perpetrator being killed. But I suppose for me that would lead me to say that's why that particular person shouldn't be in charge of deciding the punishment.
That is true. That is why in the law courts you have your 12 men, good and true, or whatever the saying is. So it's not anyone, and if they have connections to the victim or the perpetrator, they're not allowed on it, because it's supposed to be, as harsh as these things are, an external look in, so that you can actually sort of weigh things up, I guess.
Yes.
Without being personally affected by it.
You're supposed to be, as best you can be, impartial and fair.
Which is which is of course impossible, really, given human nature. You're going to fall one way or the other, but
Well, everybody brings their own baggage.
yeah.
They're all affected by everything that's happened in their lives, but at least they should be not affected by the specifics of the case. You know, they shouldn't be the brother of the victim or the brother of the perpetrator. It should be something that could be that would force them to recuse themselves. Though I often wondered if maybe there is a film that has this plot, but I was talking about it with somebody not that long ago, like a couple of years ago, about what if you had a trial in which one of the jurors is related to or married to the actual perpetrator of the trial of the crime, but that person is not the one on trial for it. So they're trying to get a conviction for an innocent defendant on the basis that once that's happened, it takes the heat off their other half, their relative, whatever. I think that could be quite an interesting concept, because obviously there would be no reason for them to recuse themselves from the trial, but they do have a very deeply vested interest in its outcome.
Yeah, of course. That no one has realised. That is good. You need to get writing again. Dust off your quill, and yeah.
I'll knock it off by tomorrow. It's fine.
Is it good? Oh, that's what I should hope. Yeah, I want to go to bed and wake up to a text that's by about 9:30 tomorrow morning, saying haven't slept. Wild-eyed. Here it is.
Yeah, a 120-page formatted text.
Yeah, this is it, and the screenplay.
There you go. Bang.
And I think we should get so and so to play the husband. Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad we've decided that. That's good. That's what I'm expecting tomorrow morning now. I'll wait when I wake up bleary-eyed.
In general, how would you say you react when your expectations are not fulfilled?
I'm horrible at that. People that know me know that.
Oh,
nah. I try not to. I try as much as possible to live here and not up here and down here all the time. I try not to do that.
Yeah.
Especially lockdown taught me to try and be that as much as possible. Not get too excited about anything. Not get too depressed about anything. But realistically, I can be a bit that. Yeah, don't go breaking my heart.
I think we all can to an extent fall into the trap of getting too eager for something, and hopefully when it doesn't go quite the way we hope, it may take us a few minutes, but we reset and we go, okay, maybe my expectations were a little ambitious.
Let's just say if you haven't provided a good sci-fi horror take on that story by the time I get up tomorrow, I'm expecting at least one more Boone roll tomorrow evening in our session. I'm saving them up.
I'll tell you, how about this? I don't think I can realistically offer you another Boone, but I can offer you a Bane.
It's only fair. Pretty much the same. Same amount of letters. Begin with the same.
I mean, they don't actually rhyme, but it's other than that.
It's close enough. They sound like they could be the two moons of a planet. So that's all
yes,
right.
they probably should be, shouldn't they? It would be quite a nice little bit of meta thing to put in a science fiction system.
Yeah,
the moons, Boone and Bane.
And when you land, on Boone, you have to roll Bane, and when you land on Bane, everything happens. You roll Boones.
Well, I was thinking more what would happen if, as part of the game, you actually track the cycles of the moon, and when Boone is up, you get a Boone on everything, and when Bane is up, you get a Bane on everything.
Oh, I like that. Like everyone on the planet is affected by it in some way. They're sort of everyone gets really down and things go bad when Boone is up. Maybe because of some electromagnetic force upon the planet. See, now we're law writing. This role-play
Yes.
game writing, like, see, easy. Come on, we're halfway there already. If you've not written me a quick start on a new system by the morning, I'm going to be very disappointed.
So what are we up to? By tomorrow morning,
We need a
while
courtroom
sober,
drama.
while sober, we need a screenplay and a complete RPG system.
Yeah.
Okay, that seems achievable. Do you need the novelization of the screenplay as well?
Nah, you can have a week or two for that. You know,
Okay.
it's busy. We're busy at the minute, so.
Yeah, it's got a lot to do.
Got a lot exactly. Don't have too much on you.
Yes. Now, I mean, I know we did discuss that there is something specifically we did plan to talk about like 6 weeks ago.
We did.
On one of these, and we've never got around to it yet. But I feel that next time will be the time we'll nail it.
We're actually going to do it next time.
I think we've got to try, because
the book that I keep bringing down every session, just on the off chance I get to flick through it and tell you what page I want you to put up.
The real problem is, I think it's now becoming a problem for us, because until we've done it, we can't plan any other session.
No, that's it. It is the ongoing session.
Yeah, because we said, the next one we're going to do is this, and that means we can't sort of think ahead of what we're going to do next afterwards. So I think we really need to. So yes, next week.
Next week we will.
We are definitely going to randomly talk about whatever the hell happens, because we're not the most organised on a Thursday.
No, it's Thursday. It's awkward.
Yeah, but I will say it was an absolute pleasure to talk to the Diesel Shop people yesterday.
Oh, definitely. It's worth being chatted today for.
And it was remarkable how quickly they got that funded, wasn't it?
It was beautiful. I was sat on there. I joined it, like I said, because I could just have it on in the background while I was working. I had no phone calls to make at that time, so while I was typing the stuff, I just had it on my phone. And yeah, they clicked it, and it was at $1,000. They were at $1,000 easily within half hour. I was there for the first couple hours, and I had to go and do some bits and pieces, and then I came back and they'd funded. I was like, wow, okay, fair play. That's very, very good.
Yeah, it is.
Good on them.
And they've got a way to go before they hit all of their stretch goals.
Yeah.
But their basic funding to actually get the game out and made is in place.
Yeah.
And we're going to have a go at it when it comes out, which I think is wonderful.
I look forward. I'll read the quick start, because there are people playing using the quick start rules at the minute. There are sessions going on because there are people doing it as part of their trying it out, and sort of they're promoting it for the launch. I'll have a read. It's only on PDF, and I do have trouble reading things on screen. I like to have a physical copy, but I might break into work office when no one's there and use their photocopier or something. And see what I can get, and then have a read through. I won't do that if my boss is watching. She won't be watching.
No. Especially because you do know that if the copy you've got is electronic, then the photocopier is called a printer.
Yeah, that's what I meant. What did I call it?
A photocopier.
Oh, photocopier. Yeah, printer. That's what I meant. It's just like I live relentlessly in the 90s. I think that's the problem. And I use overhead projectors as well. That's what we should. Acetates. There must be something we can. This is for another time. I think acetates need a comeback for some kind of game situation. Right.
There used to be games that made really creative use of acetate sheets, of like moving one over another in order to line up various things for you to move your pieces through.
Yeah, they were.
But I haven't seen those in a very long time.
When I was at for part of my degree, if I had to do a presentation, I had to go and get. Had to decide what I wanted to do and print off onto acetates, off a computer onto acetate to take to the lecture hall to present, because everything was still on overheads at the lecture hall, which is weird. Oh man, it makes me feel old. God. Yeah. No wonder Logan's run such a horror.
And do you remember the OHPs that had those rolls of acetate attached across them with a little
Yes.
winding crank handle. And
Yes.
and you used to sort of just wind the roll over so it would slowly slide off the screen and give you a new surface to write on with a pen.
Yes, I remember it well. Oh, you could redo the Star Wars intro with that. God,
You probably could.
I said it all at an
Yes.
angle.
I'm pretty confident people must have, actually.
Yeah, it'd be a missed opportunity. A ruder version for their friends when the teacher was out of the room, maybe.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, you can't easily do the vanishing into the distance part, but certainly a text scroll you can do. Yeah.
Yeah, I reckon so. Well,
Yeah.
anyway, I think I'm going to call it. It's after midnight now. I've got to get my beauty sleep. If we're going to do a full session tomorrow evening, a big 2-hour Boys from the Baltic Star on Geeker. Spectacular. What you got planned for us, Ben?
Well, I'll tell you. Not really.
We've got some things in place. I'll look through my notes, but I think we're actually going to meet some people. Make them nice. Don't make them horrible. Make them friendly. I don't want any sharks to suddenly land on us when we're in the middle of town. So I've had enough of sharks.
No, I mean, as long as you stay out of the reach of the sharks, I imagine they won't come flying at you.
That's just as well, really. Then I'm a happy bunny. Then I'm going to enjoy tomorrow evening if that's the case.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll be fun. The planet, I think, is a quite fun place to meander about. There's stuff to see and do. So
I think so. I'm looking forward to it. Okay, on that bombshell, thank you everyone who has watched live for some or all of it. I actually learned for the first time I can click on a thing to see who's actually viewing because I'm about 90 years behind everyone else. So thank you, all of you. Thank you, Ali, who watches very regularly. You are a legend and gives feedback as well. So thank you so much. And to everyone else, if you're watching it for the first time, please come back. We need you. And then tomorrow, 10 o'clock, it's our earliest start, 10 till 12 British time. We're going to go Boys from the Baltic Star, bit of role playing. Ewan's back, so we're stronger. And
yes, we are a full team for tomorrow evening, which is always greatly appreciated, I'm sure.
What joy. Okay then. See you tomorrow, Ben. See you tomorrow, everybody.
Thank you very much. Good night.
Good night.